Hey Miss Ellis, this is Zach Spur. I just wanted to share my video with you of me interviewing my grandpa. Okay. Alright, Papa. Where did you grow up and what time period was it?
Well, I was born in Ohio, and I grew up in Ohio until I was 17 years old. And that would have been in the 1940s and 50s. I was born in 1937.
Okay. Alright. Next question. What values did your parents impress upon you and your siblings?
Wow, that's a good question. I would say first, probably, the best I can remember, it was honor your father and your mother. My mom and dad always mentioned that, and I always did. I never talked back to them, and I behaved. And I think the other ones, my dad always said, I want you to be honest. Even if you've done something wrong, you need to be honest about it, because lies only get you in more trouble. And I think the third one, my mom always told me, help the elderly. I had two elderly grandmas, and I did everything to help them. Anything they'd ask me to do, run errands or anything, I'd always do it for them. So I would say those probably the three values that I can remember best.
I like those. Okay. What was your favorite thing about this time of your life?
Well, I had a lot of them, but I would say we had no cell phones or anything like that. We didn't get a lot of Christmas gifts. Nobody back then did. It was kind of a tough time to live. So I would say we spent a lot of time fishing in the river. I swam. We had a pool at our park in town, and we go up all summer long. We just go up every day. We could walk. It was safe then. You didn't have to worry about, if you were 8 years old, you could walk 8 blocks to the park by yourself. So we'd go swimming and fishing, and we basically created our own fun and games. We didn't have a lot of the things that the kids have today, all the electronic stuff. TV was even new, and when I was younger, we didn't even have a television. Very few people did, because it was brand new. So we created our own games. So I would say that the favorite thing was fishing and swimming, and then ultimately when I got older, driving a car and sports. And when I got into high school, it was sports.
Yep. Okay. That sounds good so far. All right. So do you have a memory that stands out to you and why?
Oh, wow. A memory. I got lots of memories. I'll tell you the thing that's really, people today wouldn't understand, but I think it may be important to point out. Anytime anybody asks me what was unusual about those times, we never locked our house or our cars. Never, ever. We went on a vacation one time for a week, and we left our house unlocked. I could leave my car unlocked and leave anything in the car. I could leave my wallet in there, and nobody would ever steal it. It was just, people didn't do that back then.
What was the latest technology during this time period, and did you or your family have this technology in your home?
The latest thing was televisions. We didn't have a TV. None of my friends had a TV. And when I was 12 years old, we went over to some friend's house to watch their TV. It was a 12-inch screen, and it was black and white, no color, and they only had 3 channels to watch. And about a year later, when I was 13, my mom and dad bought our first television set. And it was 12 inches, and by that time I think they had 4 or 5 channels, and it was black and white. That was the technology that I remember most about our time.
It's cool, especially what we have now.
Yes, especially what we got now.
All right. What clothing was in style at this time for boys your age?
Wow, that's good. That's a great question. When I was, all the way through, when I was younger, we wore corduroy pants and knickers, and you wouldn't know what knickers are.
Aren't those like knee socks?
Pants that came up around your knee, like baseball,
Yep.
like baseball players, and then we had long socks. But when I got to 12 and 13, that all went away, and we started wearing Levi's, and we wore T-shirts and penny loafers. It was a pair of loafer-style shoes, and it had a little slot in it where you'd put a penny in it. And the reason you had that penny in it, you could buy candy for a penny.
Mm.
And so you always had two shoes. Of course, you had two pennies. You could stop on the way home from school and buy candy.
Mm. That's pretty cool. Invention right there. I wish candy was still a penny. I'd probably stuff my shoes full of them. Okay. What type of car did you or your family drive?
My dad, let's see, he had a 1952 Pontiac, and then a 1951 Cadillac. This is about the time I was getting old enough to drive. So then when I was old enough to drive, my first car was a 1929 Ford, and I bought it for $75.
Oh, wow. Was that more expensive of a car, or was that kind of like a cheaper end today?
It would be, well, let's see. Today that car would probably, let me put it this way. My dad bought a brand new 1952 Pontiac, and it was $2,700.
Mm.
And so $75, you could do the equation yourself and determine what the differential was. It wasn't a lot of money, $75. I'd saved $85 to buy a car, and it cost me $75. And I sold it a year later for $150.
Oh, wow.
$150.
That's a big turnaround.
And then I bought my next car.
Yeah. So, this is kind of an off-topic question here. What was the average wage that you made through your high school, college years leading up to when you bought your car?
Well, my very first job, I made 50 cents an hour. That was after I was actually a newspaper boy for a while, and I averaged about 18 cents an hour for that. And then I went to work as a janitor at the college when I was 14, and I made 50 cents an hour, and that was for the summer. And then when I was in college, I worked at a furniture store, and I made 60 cents an hour.
Oh, wow. That's surprising, honestly.
That's pretty bad, huh?
Yeah. So how many years did you save up for that, for the car?
For my car?
Yep.
Oh, golly. Well, I did two things. I made about 18 cents an hour, roughly, that's what I would say it was, on my paper route. And then I'd saved from the time I was about 6 or 7. I used to go from house to house during the war, and I would get all their newspapers, and I would take them to the recycling area, and they recycled paper.
Yep.
Back then it was very valuable. And I made money from that, and also tin cans. I'd save all the tin cans and take them for recycling, and that's how I saved the money.
Yep.
And also save money if I got money for Christmas or birthday.
So, funny thing is, we're actually learning about, in Texas history right now, about how the war affected the Great Depression and Texas.
Right.
So, what were your parents doing at this time during the war? Were they working with...
Yes, my dad worked for the phone company for Ohio Bell, and my mom worked at Goodyear Tire and Rubber in Ohio, in Akron. Goodyear Tire, and they were making tires for airplanes for the war. And she worked from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till midnight.
So, what were some of the side effects of the Great Depression in your lifetime?
I would say the several things. Number one, food was very scarce. A lot of it was used for military, but there wasn't a lot of money. There was high unemployment. We had what they called soup kitchens, and you had people lining up at different places to get something to eat. they had, some of the foods were rationed, which means they only had so much. For instance, meat was the big thing. I remember you couldn't get much meat. You had actually stamps, and you were given so many stamps, and you had to use a stamp, like a postage stamp, to get meat. And we were fortunate that my Uncle Pete owned his own meat market. So he would take some of the meat and save it, and we actually got more meat than most people because at the end of the day, if he had a little extra meat, he'd set it aside for us, and we used our stamps for meat somewhere else. But food was very scarce, and there was tremendous unemployment, and they called it the Great Depression. You know what? When you have depression, you're really down in the dumps.
Yep.
That's what depression is. Well, that's where most everybody was back then.
Yeah.
We were losing a lot of our young men in military. Women weren't in the military then. They were waxed, but they weren't in combat.
Yep.
And so I would say that the biggest side effect was the high unemployment and scarcity of food to eat. So when we had a meal and you put something on your plate, you had to eat it all.
Yep.
We never threw any. We literally, I remember times when I would lick my plate because I didn't have much on it.
Yeah.
So kids today, I see them throwing food. I still have trouble throwing food away because I think back to the times when I would have given anything to have just a few more bites of food.
Yep. Okay.
So that's the biggest one.
All right. So also we were learning about how some people had problems like fully trusting the bank systems nowadays because of what had happened then. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the problem with the banks then, you never knew when they were going to close. And if you had any money in them, I remember my mom and dad would not put money in the bank back then. They kept it in a metal box. And my dad had a place, he'd cut a hole in the floor and put a little lid, like a little false floor in it. And he would pull it, and whenever he needed extra money, he'd go in and pull the carpet up. It was a throw rug-like. And underneath there, he'd cut this hole, and he put like a lid on the hole. He'd pull that up, and down in there underneath the floor in our home was this metal box, and that's where he got the money. He wouldn't put it in the bank because he's afraid they would close and we wouldn't be able to get money out of the bank.
Yeah, that's smart. So was that before any even thoughts of a Great Depression occurring, or had they?
No, that was just at the end of the Depression and the time of Second World War.
So, did you have anything to help or put forwards for the war?
Me, myself, no. We had my cousin died in the Second World War, and we didn't have television, until I was 13 years old. So early on, what we did, we would listen to the radio, and every night we would my sister and I would lay on the floor and watch the radio. We'd actually look at the radio, and the whole family would be in there listening to the latest things about the war. And I remember being afraid at times that the war would come here to America.
Yep.
And my dad said, we'll never have a war in America. And he's been right, because we've never had one here.
Yeah.
It's always been in some other country.
Did you ever listen to the fireside chats that FDR had?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we did. That was on radio. Yes, and I remember all the way through, I think we had radio through through Harry Truman's presidency, if I recall. So radio was the big thing. The fireside chat, that was huge. My dad and mom liked that.
Yep.
My sister and I, they tried to not let us listen to too much of that. They didn't want, because we were scared.
Yeah.
And
okay, so many people doubted the New Deal and the Second New Deal from FDR. What did you really think about those? Did you think highly of them? Did you think they were really going to pull through, or were you kind of doubtful in the back of your mind?
Well, I was young enough at that time. I didn't even know what the New Deal was.
Mm.
My dad didn't like it, but then my dad was a devout Republican, and he didn't like anything Democrats did. I think the New Deal, as I look at it now and think about it, it had some good things and bad things, just like most legislation that we have coming out of Washington D.C. There's some good things and some bad things. The bad things usually are more long term. The good things are up in front.
Yep.
And so I didn't think much about the New Deal back then because I really didn't even know what it was. I was that young, you know.
Yeah. So, a few more questions. Trying to think of a few good ones. Was there any specific time when you were most fearful about World War II, or it was just all kind of like you knew there was a war and that was really it? I mean, obviously you were scared, but
I'd say the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I remember that because that was on the newspaper every day, big headlines, pictures, everything. It was horrible, and that was scary because the retaliation was
atomic
our
bomb.
bombing in Japan of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Let's see, I'm trying to remember now my history. But when we then bombed Japan, then I thought we're going to have everybody's going to get bombed everywhere. We're going to get bombed. Of course, we didn't. And but I'd say those were the big things. They were very scary for everybody. I remember my grandma, who lived with us at that time, she was scared, and she would cry, and I would hold her and try to be a big boy for her, try not to, but I was scared myself. Everybody was.
Yep. So at school, were there certain things that they had you do, like air raid drills, atomic bomb drills, anything like that?
Yes, we had, at school, we had to get under our desks. We'd have fire drills and a lot of different drills, but definitely worrying about something where we'd be bombed. The schools had a system where they'd sound an alarm, and with that alarm, we had to get underneath our desk. For the fire alarms, we'd get up from our desk, and we had an orderly process to get in and go outside. But for air raids, I think they called them air raids, if I recall back then, and an air raid was a different signal. And instead of a bells, it was like a horn sound. And for those, we had to get underneath our desks and stay there until an all-clear sound. And I can't remember what that sound was. It was another horn or what it was. But I do remember that the teacher would tell us, get under your desk. She would get under her desk and say, stay there until I get out and tell you it's time, it's okay. And those were scary times, too, because we never knew whether it was real or not.
Yeah,
we didn't know whether it was a drill or the real thing.
I was about to ask, was there ever a specific time where it was a real thing that you could recall or knew?
No, and my dad had told me, don't worry about it. He said, there's never going to be anybody bombing America. No, there will never be a war here in America. And I hope he's been right so far, and I hope he's right throughout your lifetime too, buddy.
Yep. So, are there any things, this is going to be my last question, are there any things that you still are a little shaky about that you could honestly say, I think this might happen again, or if this were to happen again, you would have like a plan of action almost? Or just anything that like World War II or any time in between that kind of affected you to where you might not do a certain thing because of what had happened before?
I would say the two things that probably I'm most concerned about now would be terrorism, acts of terrorism here in the United States, of which we've already had some. And number two, my concern about North Korea having a nuclear weapon capable of reaching the West Coast. And those two things worry me most. We're already dealing with terrorism. We're trying to knock it out where it is so that it won't come here as it is, say, in Iraq and other Far East countries. So I'm hoping that what we're doing now will take care of that. Then the other one is we've got to take care of what's happening in North Korea with and also Iran, because Iran is also developing nuclear weapons.
Yep.
And the only thing that could be worse than a world war would be a nuclear war.
Yeah.
That would could end civilization as we know it. So I'm counting on cool heads, calm heads, and actions taken to eliminate nuclear weapons from countries where they have despot for rulers, where they have people that are really bad, really evil, and basically don't care about life at all.
Yeah. Okay, so for my last one, is there anything that you do now that is an effect of what has happened throughout your lifetime?
Oh, I think a lot of things. One is, let's say, I was so impressed with my mom and dad expressing values like honesty. I've always tried to be honest. I always obeyed my parents, and that's the reason I spend so much time, like I told you earlier, to tell all my grandkids, honor your father and your mother. To me, that's paramount in life. So many of the things, the other thing is I make sure that I don't put too much food on my plate. I'd rather go back and get a small second helping than to take too much and throw it away. That's an effect from my earlier life and the times of depression and war. So I would say those things, trying to instill good values in my grandchildren. That's probably because they were instilled in me at an early age.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Papa. I really appreciated you helping me with this project. And I will be sure to talk with you later and tell you how this project goes.
I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you for calling me, and I hope you get an A.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you too, buddy.